My name is Alina Carter, and I'm 31 years old. I work as a senior software engineer in a mid-sized tech startup in Seattle. It's not glamorous, and I don't drive a fancy car or post photos from rooftop parties. But I live with integrity. I work hard, and I've always tried to do the right thing, even when it costs me. This past Christmas, I learned that doing the right thing could cost you your own family. Or at least the people you once called family. It happened on a cold Christmas Eve. I just parked my Toyota outside my parents' house, the one I grew up in. Snow clung to the sidewalks, and tiny lights blinked on their porch like nothing had changed. But everything had. The moment I stepped out of the car, I already sensed something was wrong. My parents stood at the front door, stiff waiting. And next to them, my older sister Michelle, dressed like she'd just come from a luxury photo shoot, arms folded, lips curled into that familiar smirk I'd seen too many times before. I walked up the path holding a modest bottle of wine, the one my dad used to like, hoping maybe the tension from our last conversation had faded. But before I could even say hello, my mother raised her hand. She didn't ask me how I was, didn't even say Merry Christmas. She said in a voice I didn't recognize, "You are not our family anymore, Alina. You chose your side. Now live with it." I blinked. "What are you talking about?" I asked, still standing 3 steps below them on the porch. I didn't choose any side. I chose to tell the truth. Yeah. My father didn't say a word, just stared jaw tight. And Michelle, she didn't even pretend to hide it. She laughed. Not a full laugh, but that smug chuckle of someone who thinks they've already won. "You made your decision," she said. "Now own it. You're not welcome here." For a second, I felt frozen, like the snow settling on my coat. I looked at my father. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I turned to my mother, who had once made me cocoa after nightmares. Her arms were crossed. Michelle was already turning away victorious. I nodded. No words. No drama, just nodded. I walked back to my car with the bottle still in my hand, got in, and sat in silence for a few seconds. My phone was in my coat pocket. I took it out, scrolled through the contacts until I found the name I hadn't expected to use. I made one call. 5 minutes later, while I was still parked outside their house, the front door opened again. Guests began coming out. Men in coats, women in expensive dresses, all of them walking quietly toward their cars. No one said a word to the people still standing on the porch. My family. My former family. Michelle stood in the doorway, confused. My mother's mouth moved like she was asking someone something, but no one was listening. I saw the look on her face shift from self-righteousness to panic. All the guests got up from the table and left, just like that. They thought they'd won. They thought they'd buried me under shame, made an example of me for standing up to their corruption. What they didn't know was that I had spent months watching the way they operated. I had listened to the lies, the manipulation, the pressure to twist my role as a software engineer, to help the family business. But I wasn't raised to break the law for money, even if that meant standing alone. I'd always believed Christmas was about love and forgiveness. I didn't know it would become the day I stopped begging for belonging and started demanding respect. They tried to shut the door on me, but I had already opened a different one they never even saw coming. I wasn't always the black sheep. Growing up, I was the quiet one. The girl who brought books to family dinners and got excited about math problems. My parents never quite understood me, but they tolerated me until Michelle started shining. Michelle was everything they wanted in a daughter. She was loud, charismatic, and dazzling in a room full of people. She married young to a man named Travis Lane, who ran a booming real estate development company. To my parents, that marriage was their golden ticket to social standing. Suddenly, our modest family name was tied to wealth parties, invitations to exclusive events. And Michelle, she fed on it. After that, I became the embarrassing contrast. I wasn't glamorous. I didn't host dinner parties or attend charity galas. I worked long hours behind a computer leading back-end systems for a startup no one in my family could pronounce. They used to call my work button pushing and digital typing. Michelle once joked at Thanksgiving in front of 20 people, "Alina writes code, whatever that means. I guess someone has to do the boring stuff." Everyone laughed, including my mother. I tried not to let it sting. I stayed polite, respectful. I showed up for birthdays, brought gifts for my nieces and nephews, helped fix my parents' Wi-Fi more times than I could count. But the truth was, I was never celebrated, only tolerated. The divide got worse last year when Michelle and Travis began a new development project on the outskirts of Bellevue. It was a big deal, nearly 50 homes projected to bring in millions. My mother talked about it nonstop. "Our family is finally moving up," she said. And Michelle is the reason. What they didn't talk about was the sketchy software they were planning to use to manipulate permit approvals. Travis's cousin was building it. I found out by accident Michelle left a USB at my apartment after a visit. Curiosity got the better of me. The files on that drive? They were unethical, dangerous, a system designed to forge inspection records and generate fake digital signatures to rush approvals. It was clever, but I knew if it ever came to light, people would lose their homes. It wasn't just illegal, it was cruel. When I confronted Michelle, she shrugged. "It's just how the game works, Alina. Nobody gets hurt. Besides, you're in tech. You could build something better for us." I refused. I told her I wouldn't be part of it, and that if she pushed it, I'd report it. What followed was a storm of backlash. My parents called me ungrateful. My mother screamed at me over the phone, "After everything we've done for you, you'd ruin your sister's future over a software disagreement." My father called it a betrayal. I tried to explain, but no one wanted to hear it. To them, loyalty meant silence. When the city announced a surprise audit of several development firms, including Travis's, I knew what they were thinking, that I was the one who triggered it. I wasn't. Not yet. But I knew enough too. And they knew it too. That's why when I showed up on Christmas Eve, I wasn't greeted with love. I was treated like a threat. They didn't just want to disown me. They wanted to humiliate me, shut me out in front of guests, paint me as the dramatic, unstable one who ruined family harmony. They had no idea that I'd already been planning for this. Because 3 months earlier, I joined a mentorship program for women in leadership in the tech sector. That's where I met Dominic Lane. Yes, Travis's uncle. But more than that, Dominic was a veteran investor respected in both the real estate and tech spaces. He had a sharp eye and a low tolerance for corruption. We met monthly to talk about scaling projects, but the conversations always circled back to one thing: integrity. He often said, "A company built on sand will always sink. So will a family." He told me he respected the fact that I didn't use our connection to Michelle to climb ladders. And he noticed how I spoke about the value of clean systems, honest work, and responsibility. I never told him what was going on. Not fully. But that night, sitting in my car after they shut the door on me, I realized I didn't need to explain much. Dominic would understand. All I had to do was tell him the truth, and he'd know what to do. When I called Dominic that night, my hands were steady, but my chest felt like it carried bricks. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I told him everything. What Michelle had asked me to do. What I'd discovered. How they tried to force my silence. How my own parents turned their backs on me because I refused to be their accomplice. I told him about the fake software, the permit forgery, the data trails I'd traced. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Dominic said, "Where are you right now?" I told him I was parked outside my parents' house, that they just slammed the door in my face. "Stay there," he said. "Don't move." 5 minutes later, his car, a silver BMW I recognized from networking events, turned the corner. He pulled up behind the row of expensive cars lining the curb and stepped out wearing the same navy coat he wore to corporate board meetings. I didn't get out of the car. I didn't have to. He glanced at the house, then back at me. A single nod. That was all. He turned, walked up the steps, and disappeared inside. From my window, I could see the living room aglow with warm light. I could see guests laughing, glasses clinking, the fireplace crackling behind them. Michelle stood in the center of it all, radiant, soaking in the attention. My mother hovered near the drinks table, refilling wine glasses. And my father stood near the window, not watching me, but watching the street as if pretending nothing was out of place. Then Dominic appeared in the middle of the room, lifted a wine glass, and gently tapped it with a spoon. The room quieted. Conversations faded. People turned. Dominic didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His words came slow and deliberate. I couldn't hear them all from the car, but I saw Michelle's face change, her eyes, narrowing mouth twitching. My mother looked confused. My father looked panicked. Then guests started putting down their glasses, picking up coats, whispering, looking uncomfortable. Within 2 minutes, the entire room was shifting. Chairs scraped back. People gathered purses and jackets. One man walked past Michelle without even making eye contact. My mother tried to say something, gesturing toward Dominic, but he simply handed her the glass and walked out. One by one, the guests followed. A stream of wealthy investors, city officials, corporate advisors, all walking past Michelle and Travis without a word. Some looked disappointed. Others just looked cold. Dominic was the last to leave. He didn't look back. And Michelle. She stood frozen in the middle of the room, her party collapsing around her, her moment of triumph vanishing like smoke. I didn't need revenge. I just needed the truth to matter. And it did. The next morning, I woke up to over a dozen emails. One from Travis's partner asking to meet to clarify certain legal risks. Another from a city inspector who wanted to better understand the permit software systems involved. Michelle had texted me twice. The first read, "What did you do?" The second was longer, angrier. "You ruined everything. You're insane. You think you're better than us? You're a selfish traitor." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The damage wasn't mine to control anymore. Truth has a way of echoing once it's released. Later that day, Dominic called again. His voice was calm, even pleased. "I've pulled all financial backing from Travis's firm," he said. "I also spoke to 3 other investors. They've withdrawn as well. The audit you mentioned, it's moving forward. I've made a few calls to ensure they look at everything." I thanked him. He interrupted. "Don't thank me, Alina. You did this. You kept your head. You stood by your values when no one else would. That's rare. That's leadership." That night, as snow fell gently outside my apartment window, I sat alone at a small wooden table, dinner reheated in the microwave, and felt something I hadn't felt in years around the holidays: peace. Not because I had won, but because I hadn't lost myself. I thought of the little girl I once was building robots out of cereal boxes, getting laughed at by Michelle, ignored by my parents. That girl would have been proud of the woman I'd become. Not flashy, not loud, but firm, strategic, quietly powerful. They thought they'd bury me, but they forgot I was the root. I thought the worst was over after that night, but I underestimated how deep Michelle's bitterness ran. 2 days after Christmas, I received a letter. Not an email, not a text. An actual letter couriered to my apartment. It was from a lawyer representing Michelle and Travis. They accused me of defamation, interference in business contracts, and theft of proprietary data. I stared at the page for a full minute, not even angry, just stunned. They were trying to sue me, not because they had a case, they didn't, but because they were hoping I'd panic, hoping I'd fold under pressure, maybe even beg them to back off. It was a bluff, a loud, expensive bluff. What they didn't know, what they'd never cared to know, was that I had spent the last few years building more than just systems. I'd built networks, mentors, friends, allies, quiet people in powerful places who believed in values over volume, people like Dominic, and people like Danielle Moore, my attorney. Danielle was sharp, relentless, and happened to specialize in tech whistleblower protection and corporate retaliation. I forwarded the letter to her, and within an hour, she had a formal response drafted. It was polite, firm, and made it clear that if they continued this baseless legal aggression, we would countersue for harassment and defamation, citing my documented refusal to participate in unlawful activities. Danielle even attached a copy of the permit manipulation software analysis I'd quietly compiled months earlier, complete with metadata and source timestamps. Within 24 hours, the lawyer representing Michelle backed off. No apology, just a terse email withdrawing the threat. But the twist wasn't in the lawsuit. The real twist came a week later. I was sitting in a cafe downtown when Dominic called again. He asked if I had a few minutes. "Always," I said. He hesitated for a moment, then said, "I want to bring you in on something bigger." My heart skipped. "Bigger?" I asked. "I've been watching Travis's company collapse from the inside," he said. "And frankly, it needs rebuilding. But not just with a new name. It needs a new direction, a new kind of leadership. Someone who understands both tech and ethics." I didn't say anything. I was too stunned. He continued, "I've already spoken to the board. We want you to head up a new joint venture, a clean slate, focused on smart development, transparency, and sustainable systems. And you'd be the CTO. For a long moment, I sat in silence, surrounded by the soft clink of coffee mugs and quiet conversations. Then I asked why me, Dominic, didn't hesitate. Because when everyone else took shortcuts, you took a stand. When your family tried to silence you, you stayed true. That's the kind of integrity money can't buy. And it's exactly what we need. I accepted. Not because I wanted power or revenge, but because I wanted to build something better from the ground up. Something honest. Something mine. Michelle's company crumbled slowly, one investor at a time, one contract at a time. The city's audit went deeper than anyone expected, revealing not just the permit scheme, but years of financial misreporting. Travis stepped down. Michelle faded from the news. My parents, they didn't reach out. Not for months. Until one afternoon, my father showed up at my office, hat in hand, eyes tired. He looked smaller somehow. Not physically, but emotionally. I just came to say, I didn't understand before, he said. I thought loyalty meant protecting your own no matter what. But now I see it means protecting what's right. I nodded. I didn't cry. I didn't reach for a hug. I just said, thank you for coming. He left without asking for anything. And I didn't offer anything. Some things can't be rebuilt overnight. Michelle never apologized. Not that I expected her to. But I did hear through a former mutual friend that she tried to start a new project and couldn't find a single investor willing to fund her. Her name had become synonymous with deception in the circles that once admired her. And while I never celebrated her downfall, I also didn't grieve it. The twist wasn't that I won. The twist was that they all thought I would break. They bet everything on my silence, my guilt, my desperation to be accepted. But what they never understood, what they never even tried to understand, was that I didn't need them to validate me. I just needed the truth to speak louder than their lies. And in the end, it did. Months passed. The snow melted. Spring came, then summer. The new venture thrived. We launched our first pilot project in a small town outside Seattle: sustainable housing, energy-efficient materials, transparent contracts. I led a team of developers, designers, engineers, and urban planners. Every meeting, every document, every line of code was built on the idea that integrity isn't a luxury, it's a foundation. I stopped thinking about Michelle. I stopped waiting for apologies that would never come. I didn't block my parents' numbers, but I didn't reach out either. Boundaries are not about punishment, they're about peace. And for the first time in my life, I had peace. One evening in late October, I was asked to speak at a conference about ethics in technology. I stood on stage in front of a few hundred people, lights warm on my face, and shared my story. Not the family drama, not the lawsuit, not the scandal, but the core of it. The moment I realized that saying no to what's wrong can be the most powerful yes to who you are. I saw faces in the audience nodding, some teary, some smiling. I spoke not as a victim, but as a woman who had finally come home to herself. After the talk, a young developer approached me. She looked barely out of college, nervously clutching her notebook. She said, I didn't think I could speak up about the things happening at my company. But now, maybe I can. I smiled. You absolutely can, I said. But more importantly, you should. That was the real victory. Not the business, not the title, not even the collapse of their lies. It was the ripple, the possibility that one person's courage could light another's path. That's what they never understood, Michelle, my parents. Everyone who tried to shame me into silence, they saw truth as a weapon. I saw it as a torch. In December, nearly a year after that Christmas night, I hosted a dinner. Nothing grand, just 8 people around a simple table, friends, mentors, colleagues, the people who stood by me when things got hard. I cooked myself, not because I had to, but because there's something powerful about serving those who nourish your soul. Dominic came, Danielle came. So did 2 members of my team and my old college roommate. We laughed, we told stories. No one talked about investors or scandals. We just celebrated life, honesty, resilience. And when I raised my glass, I said, to family, the kind we choose, the kind that chooses us back, and the kind that never asks us to become someone else just to be loved. It wasn't the Christmas I expected a year ago, but it was the one I deserved. Outside, snow had just started to fall soft and quiet. No chaos, no tension, just the kind of stillness that wraps around you like a warm blanket. I looked around my living room, modest, yes, but filled with warmth and felt whole. Not because everything was perfect, but because I was no longer begging anyone to see my worth. They had slammed the door in my face that night, thinking they were shutting me out. But they were really locking themselves in with their lies, their image games, their hollow values. I didn't lose a family, I lost a cage. And I walked into freedom. There's a quote I think about often now. It says, "Sometimes the family you're born into isn't your real family. Sometimes real family is built in fire. That fire burned me, but it also forged me stronger, wiser, unshakable." I no longer chase acceptance. I no longer explain myself to people committed to misunderstanding me. I build, I lead, I live. And I do it all knowing I chose truth over comfort. And that choice saved me. So if you're reading this or hearing this and you've ever been pushed out for standing up, if you've ever been told you're not enough because you wouldn't go along with what felt wrong, hear me clearly. You're not alone. You're not crazy. And you are absolutely enough. You are not the problem. You are the beginning of the solution. Stand tall. Speak up. And never ever apologize for having a spine made of principle. Looking back, I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had just stayed quiet. If I had let Michelle get her way. If I had helped them with their scheme, turned a blind eye, played the obedient daughter, the agreeable sister. Life would have been easier, at least on the surface. I would have been invited to more dinners, received more fake smiles, maybe even gotten a slice of their success. But it wouldn't have been mine. It would have been bought with silence. And silence, when it betrays your own conscience, is never free. It collects interest. It eats at you slowly, in quiet moments in the dark. And I've learned that no amount of family approval is worth losing yourself. People talk about family like it's sacred, untouchable. And maybe it is for some. But for others, family becomes the first place where you learn about conditional love, where support is a currency traded for obedience, where your worth is weighed against how useful you are to their image. I had to unlearn that. I had to unlearn the idea that love requires shrinking, that loyalty means silence, that forgiveness is owed even when there is no remorse. I had to teach myself something new, that self-respect is not rebellion, that boundaries are not cruelty, and that healing doesn't always mean reconciliation. It sometimes means distance, permanent distance. I walk differently now, not in speed, but in direction. I don't flinch when people raise their voice. I don't bend when someone questions my values. And I no longer explain my choices to those who never cared to understand them in the first place. That's not coldness, that's clarity. And clarity, I've found, is more liberating than any apology you're still waiting for. My life isn't perfect. I still work long hours. I still wrestle with doubt. But I'm surrounded by people who see me not as a pawn, not as a threat, but as a whole person. People who don't need me to fail to feel strong. People who can sit at my table and eat the food I make, not to judge it, but to appreciate it. That is wealth. That is family. And it's worth more than any inheritance, any title, any hollow compliment meant to keep me in line. To anyone out there who's been disowned, dismissed, or disrespected by the very people who were supposed to love you most, I hope you know this. You don't have to earn dignity. You were born with it. And anyone who makes you feel like it's negotiable does not deserve your silence. They deserve your absence. You will be tested. You will be gaslit. They will tell you you're the problem. They will weaponize your kindness. They will twist your motives. And when you finally stand your ground, they'll call you difficult, ungrateful, dramatic. Let them. You're not here to be understood by those who refuse to see you. You're here to build something better, starting with yourself. I no longer try to be the daughter they wanted. I became the woman I needed. And that woman, she's not angry. She's not bitter. She's free. And that freedom, that peace, that self-respect, It's the kind of Christmas gift that doesn't come wrapped in bows. It comes after storms, after slammed doors, after hard choices. But when it comes, you'll know, because it feels like home, not the kind you're born into, the kind you build, brick by brick, choice by choice, until one day you open your own door, pour a glass of wine, sit at a table filled with people who see your worth, and you say quietly, firmly, with no bitterness at all, "This is my family now, and I'm finally home."